Good evening, dear listener. If you enjoy calm history like this, you can also listen on Spotify or explore history audiobooks on Audible. Both are linked in the description for you. Tonight, we step into shoes worn thin by desperate necessity into a world where every sunrise brings fresh terror and every sunset counts as victory. You are no longer yourself. You are Marguerite, a 32-year-old mother in the year 1348. And your 3 children depend entirely on your wits, your strength, and your unbreakable will to survive. The hasn't even crowed when you feel the familiar weight of dread settling across your chest like a stone. Your eyes open to complete darkness, but your body already knows the rhythm. Agnes, your youngest at barely 3 years old, is whimpering beside you on the straw mattress that serves as your family's bed. Her small body burns with fever, and you know without looking that the rash has spread further across her neck. Your hand moves instinctively to her forehead, and the heat radiating from her skin sends ice through your veins. This is how it starts. This is how the Black Death announces its arrival in your home, just as it has in countless others throughout your village. But you are not countless others. You are a mother, and surrender is not written in your vocabulary. Thomas, your middle child at 7 years old, stirs beside his sister. His breathing is labored, and you can hear the wet rattle in his chest that appeared 2 days ago. Your eldest, Marie, at 10, sleeps fitfully near the wall, her face pale but mercifully cool to the touch. 3 children, 3 souls, depending on you to work miracles with nothing but determination and whatever scraps of knowledge you can piece together from whispered conversations with other desperate mothers. You rise before dawn because dawn waits for no one, and neither does death. The dirt floor is cold beneath your bare feet, and the single room that houses your entire family feels smaller each day, as if the walls themselves are closing in with the weight of your fears. Your husband disappeared 3 weeks ago, swept away by the same sickness that now threatens your babies. There was no time for proper mourning, no luxury of grief. Survival demands every moment of your attention. The fire died during the night, as it always does, and you must rebuild it with hands that shake from exhaustion and terror. The kindling is damp from yesterday's rain that leaked through the thatched roof. But you work patiently, methodically, because patience is the only tool you have left. 1 spark, 2 sparks. Finally, blessed warmth begins to spread through the room. Water is your first priority always. The well at the center of the village has been poisoned, they say, contaminated by the same evil that carries sickness from house to house. But the stream beyond the mill still runs clear, and you must reach it before the other mothers claim what little clean water remains. You wrap your shawl tighter around your shoulders and slip into the pre-dawn darkness, leaving your children sleeping under every blanket you own. The village streets tell stories of horror that daylight mercifully conceals. Bodies lie where they fell, covered hastily with whatever cloth their families could spare. The baker shop stands empty, its owner carried away by fever just yesterday. The blacksmith's forge has been cold for a week. Yet you walk these streets because you must, because your children need you to transform terror into action, despair into determination. At the stream, you encounter Margaret from the house near the church. Her eyes are hollow with the same exhaustion that weighs down your own soul. She has lost 2 children already, and her remaining daughter grows weaker each day. You exchange no words, but you share the universal language of mothers in crisis. You help each other fill your vessels with precious water, and you both pretend not to notice the tears that fall silently into the stream. Returning home, you find Agnes awake and calling for you in a voice so small it breaks your heart into pieces you cannot afford to feel. Her fever has climbed higher, and the rash now covers her arms like angry red flowers blooming under her skin. You wet a cloth with the precious clean water and place it gently on her forehead, whispering prayers to saints whose names you barely remember from childhood. Thomas sits up slowly, his young face etched with confusion and fear. He understands enough to know that something terrible is happening, but not enough to comprehend the magnitude of the threat surrounding your family. You force your voice to remain calm, steady, reassuring, even as panic claws at your throat like a living thing. Food has become an impossible puzzle with pieces that never quite fit together. The grain stores were exhausted weeks ago, and the remaining merchants demand prices that mock your empty purse. But children must eat, especially sick children whose bodies fight battles that medicine you can afford. You gather what you can find, stuffing your apron full of leaves and roots and berries that might mean the difference between life and death for your babies. The sun climbs higher as you work, and you know other mothers throughout the village are engaged in their own desperate searches for salvation. Some tend sick children in houses that smell of death and despair. Others have already lost their battles and now face the impossible task of continuing to live in a world that has taken everything precious from them. You are all warriors in the same war, fighting with weapons made of love and stubbornness and the absolute refusal to surrender. Returning home, you find Thomas trying to comfort his little sister, his small hands smoothing her hair with a gentleness that makes your heart ache. Children should not have to face such horrors, should not have to watch their siblings suffer, should not have to understand that the adults who are supposed to protect them are just as frightened and helpless as they are. You brew tea from the willow bark, sweetening it with the last precious drops of honey hidden in your stores. Agnes drinks reluctantly, her small face screwing up at the bitter taste. But she trusts you completely. Absolutely. With the blind faith that children give their mothers. That trust feels heavier than stone across your shoulders because you know how fragile your power really is. How little you can actually do against forces so much larger than yourself. The afternoon brings visitors that you both dread and desperately need. Other mothers from the village, women who have become your closest allies in this fight for survival. You share information in hushed tones, comparing symptoms, exchanging remedies, offering what comfort you can to those whose children have grown worse since yesterday. Sarah from the house near the mill has tried everything she can think of for her son's fever, but nothing seems to help. Elizabeth, whose husband was a merchant before the sickness came, still has some coin hidden away. But there are no healers left to pay, no medicines left to buy. You are all educated now in ways no mother should ever have to learn. Experts in symptoms and treatments that textbooks have never been written about. Marie helps you tend to Agnes, while the other mothers share their stories of small victories and devastating defeats. She changes her sister's cloth with hands that should be playing with dolls, and she whispers lullabies in a voice that trembles with the weight of responsibilities no child should carry. But she does carry them because love makes warriors of us all regardless of age. Evening approaches with the weight of another day survived. But survival feels different when measured in hours instead of years. Agnes seems slightly cooler, or perhaps that is merely wishful thinking disguised as medical observation. Thomas has eaten a small portion of the thin GRL you managed to prepare from your dwindling supplies. Marie remains strong, your anchor in storms that threaten to sweep away everything you hold precious. You check and double-check your children throughout the night, measuring their breathing, monitoring their temperatures, adjusting blankets and cloths, and positioning with the precision of someone who understands that details can mean everything. Sleep comes in fragments between these vigilant watches, and your dreams are filled with visions of healthy children running through fields that exist only in memory. This is your reality now. This endless cycle of fear and hope and desperate action, repeated day after day, without promise of resolution. You are no longer the woman you were before sickness came to steal your world away. You have been transformed into something harder, more focused, stripped down to the essential core of what it means to be a mother when everything else has been taken away. Tomorrow will bring fresh challenges, new fears, different battles in the same war you fight every single day. But tonight, your children still breathe. Tonight, they still call your name when darkness frightens them. Tonight, you have not yet failed in the most important task ever given to any human being. You are Margaret, and you are not finished fighting. The first gray light of dawn creeps through the gaps in your thatched roof, and with it comes the sound that has haunted your sleep for weeks. Agnes is coughing again. That wet, desperate sound that turns your blood to ice water. You know this cough. You have heard it echoing through the village streets, drifting from houses where mothers, just like you, wage the same impossible battle against an enemy they cannot see or understand. Your feet hit the cold dirt floor before your mind has fully awakened. Muscle memory guiding you through movements that have become as natural as breathing. Check Agnes first. Her forehead burns like a coal pulled fresh from the fire, but she is breathing. She is still beyond the village demands a journey through streets littered with evidence of battles lost by other mothers who fought the same war you continue fighting. But clean water means everything. When fever burns through small bodies like wildfire consuming dry wood, you wrap your heaviest shawl around shoulders that have grown sharp with hunger and stress. Food has become a luxury reserved for your children, and you survive on scraps and determination and the absolute refusal to consider any alternative to victory. Your stomach protests its emptiness, but you ignore its complaints the same way you ignore the exhaustion that weighs down your bones like chains. The door cacks as you slip into the morning darkness, leaving behind the sound of your children's labored breathing and carrying with you the weight of their absolute dependence. Every step away from them feels like betrayal, but every step toward the stream represents hope made manifest through action. This is the paradox of motherhood in times of crisis. You must leave them to save them. The village reveals its wounds more clearly in the growing light. The cooper's workshop stands silent, its owner buried 3 days ago beside his wife and infant son. The tavern where merchants once gathered to trade stories and coin now serves as an impromptu hospital where the few remaining healthy adults tend to neighbors who have no family left to care for them. Margaret appears at your shoulder like a ghost materializing from the morning mist. Her presence both comforts and terrifies you because she represents the future you might face if your own battles end in defeat. She has buried 3 children in the past month, but she continues moving through each day with mechanical precision, helping other mothers fight wars she has already lost. Together, you walk the muddy path toward the stream. 2 women bound by shared understanding of impossible choices and devastating losses. Neither speaks because words have become inadequate for expressing the depth of fear and love and desperate hope that drives you both forward despite overwhelming odds. The stream runs clear and cold, untouched by the corruption that has poisoned wells throughout the region. You fill your bucket with water that might as well be liquid salvation, precious beyond gold or jewels, or any treasure that existed in your previous life. Margaret helps you lift the heavy vessel, and you return the favor. 2 mothers sharing burdens too great for any individual to bear alone. Walking back through streets that grow more desolate each day, you encounter Father Benedict emerging from the church where he has spent the night, administering last rites to parishioners whose families could no longer care for them. His face carries the weight of countless confessions from parents begging forgiveness for children they could not save, and his eyes hold shadows that speak of faith tested beyond human endurance. He nods silently as you pass, offering a blessing with hands that shake from exhaustion and grief. You accept his gesture gratefully, because hope arrives in many forms, and you have learned to recognize every possible source of strength. Religion, superstition, folk wisdom, passed down through generations of mothers who face their own impossible challenges. You embrace them all because desperation makes believers of everyone. Agnes calls for you before you reach the door. Her small voice carrying across the morning air like a prayer answered. She is awake, aware, asking for water in words that sound almost normal. Your heart leaps with cautious optimism because normal feels miraculous after days of delirium and fever-twisted rambling. Thomas has managed to sit up without assistance, his young face pale but alert. He watches you with eyes that hold too much understanding for someone his age, but understanding paired with trust so complete, it takes your breath away. He believes you will save him because that is what mothers do. They work miracles through love and stubbornness and refusal to accept defeat. You prepare willow bark tea with the careful precision of someone performing a sacred ritual. Every measurement matters when dealing with remedies that walk the narrow line between healing and harm. Too little might prove useless against fever that climbs higher each hour. Too much could bring dangers of its own to small bodies already pushed beyond their limits. The bitter liquid meets resistance from Agnes, but you persist with gentle patience that masks urgent desperation. She must drink. She must accept this offering of hope disguised as medicine. Her small hands push weakly against the wooden cup, but eventually she swallows enough to satisfy your maternal calculation of what constitutes adequate treatment. Maria assists without being asked, holding her sister's head steady and whispering encouragement in a voice that trembles with unshared tears. She has become your partner in this fight, shouldering responsibilities that should never fall to children, but which circumstances have forced upon her young shoulders. Her childhood ended the day sickness entered your home, replaced by a premature wisdom and courage that both inspires and breaks your heart. The morning progresses with the careful routine you have established to impose order on chaos that threatens to overwhelm every aspect of your existence. Check temperatures, administer remedies, encourage small amounts of food, monitor breathing, adjust blankets, whisper reassurances that sound convincing even when you barely believe them yourself. Other mothers begin arriving as the sun climbs higher, drawn by the same desperate need for community that has bonded women throughout history. When faced with threats too large for individual resistance, they bring news from their own households, sharing information about symptoms and treatments with the clinical precision of battlefield surgeons comparing wounds and strategies. Elizabeth reports that her youngest daughter's fever broke during the night. Offering hope that burns bright in hearts accustomed to disappointment, Sarah describes a new rash appearing on her son's chest. Seeking advice from women who have become unwilling experts in cataloging the progression of symptoms that might herald recovery or signal approaching defeat. You listen carefully to every detail, storing information that might prove crucial when your own children's conditions change or worsen. These women have become your teachers, your students, your fellow warriors in battles that demand everything, while promising nothing in return except the possibility of tomorrow. The afternoon brings tasks that must be completed regardless of how desperate your circumstances become. Clothes need washing, though soap has become scarce and clean water precious beyond measure. Food must be prepared from ingredients that grow fewer each day. Fuel for the fire requires gathering, though venturing beyond the village boundaries grows more dangerous as desperate people make desperate choices. Maria accompanies you on these necessary expeditions. Her presence both comfort and additional responsibility. You must protect her while relying on her help. Keep her safe while teaching her skills she will need if your own strength fails. The balance requires constant adjustment, like walking across ice that might crack beneath the weight of miscalculation. Agnes sleeps fitfully through the afternoon, her small body fighting battles you cannot see but whose progress you measure through subtle changes in breathing and skin temperature. Each peaceful moment feels like gift. Each sign of dist